Raise your hand if you've ever heard the term cultural broker. Ooh, just a few, not as many as I thought would know. So I'm here today to talk to you about who cultural brokers are, why we in emergency management need them, and how do you find them. So cultural brokers are simply people in your community. They're the barista, they're a firefighter, they're the person that works at the grocery store, they're the HOA president. They're simply someone in your community that knows a lot of people, that has a shared consciousness with them, that's empowered to make change, and they're trusted. That's almost the key thing, is they are a trusted member of that group. So why do we need them? We need them in emergency management because they can force multiply information and they can gather information and give it back to you when that really bad day happens. How do you find them? You're not going to find them from sitting at your desk. You have to get out in your community and you have to meet people. You have to get to know them and you have to listen. It's not hard to sit at the coffee shop with your laptop and your logo sweatshirt. Pretty soon people will start talking to you. You start talking to them, you start getting to know them, you're getting to know your community. Sometimes they have a shared language. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the culture is simply they live in the mountains and that culture is what their culture is. And so they have a different experience, a different way of looking at things, and they might hate the government when they live in the mountains like they do here in Colorado. So I want to provide you with a couple of great examples. So in 21, we had a really big urban fire in Colorado. We lost 1,100 homes, businesses, damage, driven by really high, almost hurricane force winds. So it was declared a fire event, but also it was a high wind event. Those high winds ripped roofs and skirts off mobile homes. I knew that, worked with FEMA, went into that mobile home park and tried to get people to apply for FEMA. Many of them only spoke Spanish. Many of them didn't have transportation and didn't know, because they were undocumented, that because they had children that were documented, they could apply for FEMA. While working in that mobile home park, everyone kept asking, did you talk to Peggy? Have you talked to Peggy? Have you talked to Peggy? Who's Peggy? Got to know Peggy. Fast forward a couple of months, we have another wildfire. Huge evacuation, including that mobile home park. I remembered Peggy. I remembered those folks didn't often have transportation. I asked a deputy to go to that mobile home park, talk to Peggy, give Peggy the information on how a person could get transportation for free to the shelter, and assure her no one was checking documentation, and that they would be transported back when the evacuation was lifted. Those three things were key. We had almost 3 times the number of people in our shelter for the same amount of evacuated people during that event. And I really believe it was because of that relationship we had formed with Peggy and the way that we were able to communicate that information out. Another example, this time last year I was on EMAC in Alaska. My mission in Alaska for Typhoon Merbok was to help 28 native villages do assessments in those villages of what they needed to shelter in place for the rest of the winter. Winter had set in, barges couldn't run, we had to get supplies out by airplane, but we needed to know who was staying with their friends and family. In the native villages, they're not gonna just get on a plane. That's not an option. Now, the state could put them on a plane and bring them to Anchorage and allow them to stay there over the winter until their place could be repaired in the spring. But that's not what they wanted. They want to stay with their people. I know some people in Alaska, have friends there. My husband happens to work in Alaska half the year. Stopped in to see a friend of his parents, talking to them about what they did. They say, oh my gosh, we were pastors in Bethel. Bethel is one of the communities that I was working in. You need to talk to the doctor. Gave me the doctor's name and phone number, called them. I called her, the doctor, because they said she goes into every one of those villages you're working in. She knows who those cultural brokers are. I did that, got names and phone numbers of people. I was able to get more information quicker for the state of Alaska by calling those cultural brokers who knew everything. They knew the number of dogs they had. They knew whether or not they still had pet food. They knew which relative they were staying with. They were able to give me information that we were able to build on in order to get the supplies that we needed out into those communities faster than the state of Alaska could do. It was all because of those relationships and those cultural brokers. So I implore you, spend some time in your community, figure out how to meet people, build that trust, and get out there, and it'll help you in the long run. Thank you.